What's going on, YouTube? I know this video is a little bit different. It's a little out of my normal setting, but these are a couple things that I wanted to go over regarding the swap. A couple things that I mentioned in the first video, the intro, that I said I would touch on and go over. A couple things in the last video that I posted, the transmission cross member video, that I didn't get to mention. It escaped my brain. So here's a couple things that you guys need to know when it comes to installing the engine or transmission, I guess both, into the e30. There's some things that need to be noted and you guys need to know about. So I wanted to make a video solely on getting those things to you guys. So no garage today, no car, but these are some important notes. Let's get into it. Okay, first thing I want to add is you need to have two people for this. It was pretty difficult for me to do by myself. I was pretty sore the first day. I pulled the engine in and out probably close to a dozen times. It's pretty rough because, you know, you're loading everything up, you're wheeling the hoist over there, you're getting the engine in, and then you realize that you got to beat this part out. So you beat that part out, you pull the engine out, you beat that part out, you put the engine back in, you realize you didn't beat it far enough, you pull the engine back out, you beat it some more, you put the engine back in. Now you realize you got to beat the other side, you pull the engine back out, you beat it some more. It would go so much easier if you had someone to help you. So if that is not an option for you, and you are absolutely, maybe you're just a solo dolo type guy, whatever the case may be, if that's not gonna work for you, I suggest you get an engine load leveler. This right here is a tool that would have made my life so much easier, but I decided to cheap out on and not use it. Now, do you absolutely need it? Obviously not, but I mean, it's so frustrating. For those of you guys who don't know what this is, it's basically like a tilt system on your engine hoist. So you can see here what's going on. It allows you to adjust your engine's angle with literally just the use of a crank at the end of it. It also allows you to keep the engine perfectly level the whole time you're putting it in, or if you need to go up over something or dip it down real sharp like they're doing in the picture here. It allows you to do all that with just a level, or some of them even have an Allen key on the end for you to put in an impact or your drill on it, and you can just zip it and it'll go forward and lift it up, or, you know, go backwards and it'll drop it, whatever. But it's also really frustrating trying to find points on the small block Chevy where you can put your chain on there and, you know, keep it level, because there's a lot of pushing and yanking and jerking when it comes to this swap. You got to go over the cross member, you got to go sway bar to go over. It's not fun. It was not fun, and this would have made my job a lot easier. All right, so let's get into the hammering part of it. So this view here is like if I were laying on my back in the engine bay. Obviously you could see the trans tunnel here. So these right here are a couple little threaded nipples that need zipped off. There's one here, one here, one here, and one here. I just went in there with my Dremel and zipped them right off. You could maybe hit them off with a hammer. I wouldn't risk it. I would saw them off with a Dremel or a grinder. Those need to go for you to get the transmission in there. Those hold on the heat shield or sound deadening, whatever that was up under here. Once you get under the car, you'll see what I'm talking about. Also, these rivets right here, you can see this part comes out. Same over here. These first ones, these back ones don't really matter because the transmission kind of cones, but these first ones need to be beat flush, at least on the sides. I don't think the top matters, but the sides, I would say up 8 or 9 inches, these need to be beat flush into the trans tunnel. You also need to beat out right here. Same thing over here. Now, this side needs to be beat out really far because your slave cylinder attaches right there on your transmission, on your LT1 T56. Now, you need to be careful because I ended up beating mine so far out from the trans tunnel that it actually pushed the, because on the other side of this trans tunnel right here is your gas pedal, your throttle pedal, your pedal box, the whole assembly. So as you, in your first pedal farthest to the right is obviously farthest to the left on here is your gas pedal. So as I was beating this out, I beat it out so far that it actually went into my gas pedal so that I couldn't even throttle forward because the wall was now rubbing on my gas pedal. So I had to go in there and beat it back in so that I had just enough room to reassemble my throttle linkage and clear the wall so I could use my gas pedal. Now, the fix to that is kind of expensive. Like I said, you're able to do it without this, but it's really a bitch because you have to beat it all the way out, get the trans in there, and then beat it back in just enough so that you're clearing the slave cylinder, but you have enough room to use your throttle. Now, the way around that is through this guy right here. Is an LT1 hydraulic bearing conversion. It takes your LT1 T56 and converts it to a hydraulic throwout bearing, the same style of bearing that's used in the LS1 T56. Now, the reason why that's special is because, as you can see here, it sits inside the transmission bell housing, as where the LT1 T56, see, there we go, the slave cylinders on the outside. You can see obviously where this mounts to the outside of the transmission. You can see what I'm talking about, versus this guy right here mounts inside, and you literally just have these two lines coming out. One is literally just a bleeder valve, and the other runs up to your clutch. So you got nothing coming out of the transmission but your lines, as opposed to this joint here where you have this whole big ass spacer. And I mean, this thing is fucking huge. In real life, it's like this big, it's that tall and that wide. I mean, it's huge. It's like the size of a baseball. And then you got your slave cylinder, which is probably 5 or 6 inches in length, and then it's also 3 inches wide here at the top. So I would definitely recommend going with the throwout bearing conversion kit, especially considering it's only $545. And with the route I took, I paid more than that for my clutch alone, because the clutch I bought was specially mated with my flywheel. And so if you do this, you can buy a regular flywheel, regular clutch, and just run this throwout bearing, and you save yourself the time and headache of doing all that hammering. Here's another route, which is essentially the same thing, but it's like a different method. They have their own custom flywheel, their own custom clutch, but it also converts you to that push style of throwout bearing, as to where the LT1 T56 is the pull style. So another thing that you're gonna have to do is on your T56, it may not come with it. I bought mine used and it came with both of them. You got your reverse lockout here, then you have your CAGs. So your CAGs is like skip shift. So what that is it's like some type of computer program bullshit, where if you're shifting from second into third, but the transmission feels like you're going fast enough to go into fourth, it will lock you out of third gear and just put you straight into fourth. Obviously, that's not what you want. I mean, if you're building this car, it's because you want to feel every single gear. So it also won't fit. You don't really have a choice. You have to pull that out. You can see it sticks out here past the transmission. So same thing with the reverse lockout. If you're worried about going from fifth gear into reverse, you got issues, and you should probably rethink this build. Again, with this, it won't fit. I actually tried to keep both of mine on, and I could see when I pulled it out to check fitment that I had some grease right here and some grease right here, and also scraped paint off from where it was scraping the trans tunnel because it would not fit. It was just too wide. So they won't go in there. Those have to be removed. For this one, it takes a plug. It's an oil drain plug. I got mine at O'Reilly. I believe it's an M16 by 150. If that's not correct, I'll put up the dimensions right here. As far as this goes, Sicky sells a kit where you can, it's got that plug and it's got a little bolt-on cover here. I just got some scrap metal, cut off a little piece and bolted it down. It's not rocket science for that part. Okay, now for the oil pan. The oil pan was something I talked about in the first episode, the intro. I told you guys I would get into it and I never did. So here we are. This is what the front sump oil pan looks like. So this is the back of the car. This is the front of the car. You see, you got your flywheel here, and you got what looks like a stall converter, or a transmission stall here. You got your transmission pan. So, traditionally in your Chevy engines, your pickup tube comes straight down here, and here's where most of your oil resides. But in a front sump, the sump comes down, goes towards the front of the car, and it drops again, because this is where 90% of your oil reserve is gonna be at. So it's called a front sump. It's sumped in the front. So that helps with a lot of fitment. It's hard to tell by this picture, but this part right here is actually dented in for even more clearance. You can see the little wrinkles here, kinda, but it's not like this. Like this goes all the way across and then up. This only goes about halfway, and then it cuts back for more clearance. So that really helps. Let me see. I got another picture for you. There you go. You can kind of see what I'm talking about here. But anyways, that it's a necessity, because my cross member is literally sitting like right here. It is almost, I think it's touching even. So without this, it's not gonna happen unless you custom make your own oil pan, like I said in the first episode. I got this from Classic Industries for like 416 bucks. It came with all the gaskets, a whole set of bolts. It also came with a dipstick gasket cover, because my block, the dipstick is on the passenger side, and this oil pan is made for the dipstick on the driver's side, but it also has a custom made dipstick hole. As you can see here, here's the traditional and here's the custom made one. So this doesn't even go through your block. This just, you just stab your dipstick tube into this, and then you just plug it in right there. As to where on your block, there's a hole right here on your engine block so that you can go into the oil pan. But like I said, it comes with a plug, so I just plug that off. If your oil pan, or if your engine has the dipstick on the right side, then you're in good shape. You won't need that. But yeah, it also comes with this, which is great. I mean, like literally perfect. I bought it and I was like, oh fuck, what am I gonna do about this? Lo and behold, it was there. Another thing you guys need to know regarding the transmission, specifically the cross member, one thing I didn't point out in the last video was that the cross member bolts that are used to hold up the cross member, they are not stuck, they're not fixed in one spot. They actually have slots that are about 12 inches in length, so you can adjust your fitment of the cross member forward or backward depending upon your application. So back to the transmission, there are a couple things that need to be trimmed off. They're called ears. So it's like this thing right here, this thing right here, this thing right here. You can see there's another one here, and then there's a couple on the other side. These things also, along with the reverse lockout, they scrape the transmission, or they scrape the trans tunnel, and you just won't be able to get it in there. They don't do anything anyways. They're just for looks and aesthetics, I'm pretty sure. Maybe it's for mounting something back in the 80s, but that's not relevant to our build even. It doesn't compromise anything, and it's also not an option. You're not going to be able to get it in there with these on there, so just do yourself a favor and trim it off. So another thing that needs to be noted on the transmission is, you can see here that I've trimmed back one of the grooves. I'm going to go ahead and refer to it as the spine. It is on the back side of the transmission bell housing, and basically it stops you from getting the transmission to sit flush up against the firewall, thus preventing proper lineup of the shifter inside the car. Alright guys, well that just about covers everything that I wanted to go over with you guys. I wanted to make sure that you guys got a little bit of the inside, a couple of things I didn't get to go over or may have missed. That's basically everything that went through my head in between episodes that I don't talk about. Hopefully you guys weren't wondering too hard, or didn't have too many questions. Hopefully if you did have questions, I covered them all. In the next episode, that is actually already made, I'm just waiting to drop it, you guys get to see how I made my engine mounts. You guys get to see how I mount my engine, what method I used, and what the engine looks like mounted. Hope this clears some questions up you guys had. Until next time, peace.